Hello everyone and welcome back to the Great Book of Grudges. My name is Nathan and today we're going to be talking about Grand Cathay, but not for Total War Warhammer, rather that for Warhammer the Old World. As we are all aware, Grand Cathay was recently hinted by Games Workshop in the whole coming soon section, which is quite exciting as we've known that Grand Cathay is going to be a faction for Warhammer the Old World for quite some time now. But there's a few things that make me question how this is going to be implemented and really the scope and scale of Grand Cathay. We know that that's going to be a big ticket for the Old World because it's a new race. That means that there's a lot of new models and a lot of people are going to be interested in buying it. But from what we also know from Total War Warhammer, and from the bits of lore conducted in interviews such as by myself, there's a lot to Grand Cathay that still hasn't even been shown in Total War, which means that we could actually end up with quite a large amount of models. Some people are even hypothesizing very similar to that of the Space Marine range for Warhammer 40k, which sounds cool but also could be a lot of bloat. So we're going to talk about a few things. Let's begin. Okay, so first up we're going to talk about the roster in Total War Warhammer. There's actually quite a lot of it, and even though Cathay has only had one DLC, they're still relatively full. They were a launch faction for Warhammer 3, which meant that their roster was always going to be a little bit empty. But Shadows of Change, after it got fixed up in its 2.0 version, did introduce a lot of big monsters here and there. There's a lot of different humans, there's some big monsters, there's, well, even some pretty good options for lords and hero choices, and I could see that all being translated into Warhammer the Old World. The thing is, we're still missing 2 active dragon children at the time. We don't know if any others that are lost. Keep in mind that there's currently 4 which are considered lost at the moment, one still being alive but somewhere in Norska. So we don't know if any of those other 4 will be active. Alongside there's the missing Monkey King, and the Monkey King is expected to have his own monkey warriors, so we could expect those characters being introduced eventually. This makes me question how Cathay is going to be implemented. There's 2 ways that Games Workshop can go about this. There could be one army book, so rather than being released in a Forces of Fantasy or Ravening Hordes, it's just Cathay, which is entirely possible if the roster is going to be quite large. Or, and this is another way which we've seen happen in the past, they could do the Arcane Journal system, all of them tied up together in a very similar sense of what happened to the Lumineth Realm Lords for Age of Sigmar. They're supposed to have 3 waves, maybe even 4. Right now they've had 2, 1, and then the second one came out about a year and a half later. The third one is currently missing in action, and it's been quite a bit of time though, and that's what kind of concerns me. I would rather one big book, but I imagine that that can't be possible due to the fact that we're still missing a lot of characters and a lot of missing units in Total War. And considering that the artwork for Grand Cathay in the Old World rulebook is that of Total War, I can imagine that CA is having a hand in the creation of the units too. This is something that's happened in the past, and I can imagine is going to keep on happening. Now imagine that a singular book would not happen because they'd release a bunch of rules for characters that just don't have models. This is something that led to a court case a while back, and a lot of proxy companies would start coming in, which a lot of people would jump into. They'd probably just decide to go with the whole 3 book system, maybe even 4 if they want to separate the Monkey King a little bit further, and that way they can start just releasing in waves. A book per year could actually be very possible. Financially, that would also make a lot of sense because that would mean a lot of money coming in, just generating sales constantly. If you're not interested in the first wave of Cathay, you might be interested in the second wave, and then you'd go back to the first wave to get some basic core units, because I imagine that the first book, if they do a first, second, third, and maybe 4th book, would be full of just core stuff, just to get your armies up and running. Then the second book would focus on monsters, and the third book would maybe focus on some more celestial type of stuff. I don't know, I'm just making an educated guess. The first DLC in Shadows of Change did introduce quite a few big monsters and stuff like that, so that's why I think it's going to be like that. Multiple books would also allow for the introduction of multiple characters, because right now in Total War Warhammer, we have Zhao Ming, Miao Yin, so those were the base game lords. Yuan Bo came in with Shadows of Change, and then there was a legendary hero, which was a Terracotta Sentinel. There's actually 2 named in the Cathay map, so it's very likely that there could be a second one. At that point, we still don't have Yin Yin the Sea Dragon, Li Dao the Fire Dragon, and also the Monkey King. I'm imagining some extra characters coming in through there too. The thing right now, and this is why I think it's going to be staggered a little bit too, usually when it comes to the Arcane Journal system, it's around 2 to 3 characters, depending on the book, mostly 2, which I'm not too keen on. I do think that the Arcane Journal should come in with 3 to 5 characters to allow for more play styles and so on, but, I'm not the guy who makes the decisions here. An educated guess would probably say that we'd likely see more Arcane Journals for all the core races anyway, because they seem very popular, and to be honest, I really do enjoy them myself. I've recently had a small play around with the Heralds of Darkness list, which isn't too bad. It's just a little bit shame that, the Hellstriders and the Skullcrushers aren't there, because apparently, there's no mix between Age of Sigmar and Old World, despite the fact that these were Warhammer Fantasy minis. Sorry, I have to complain about that any chance that I do get. So if they're going to be doing more Arcane Journals for the other factions, like the core ones, it could be justified to do kind of like that for Cathay. Obviously, it's always going to be a bit strange, but Cathay and Kislev were always kind of confirmed. There was a pushback a while back from Games Workshop, but they always do that. So they were always going to have a different system, and I don't really imagine Cathay and Kislev releasing at the same time. They'll want to spread it out, so that way they can end up getting the cash spread out through individual and important quarters throughout financial years. It's one of the things that just make a lot of sense, and it's what Games Workshop have been doing religiously, I guess, for the past few years, and it's worked out. I mean, they're doing very well financially. Back to the roster, but now talking about something a bit different. I imagine that most of it will be plastic. There will be some resin bits, but it will probably be around the Cathayan dragons, as those characters would be way too much money not to have in the game. And I could imagine maybe the Terracotta Sentinel being resin and so on, something big, but in most cases, we're likely going to see a lot of plastic. There's been a lot of people complaining about the amount of resin in Old World. I mean, it kind of makes sense with certain things. I still don't know why, for example, the Tombsworn that have been remade into resin when they could have easily been plastic. It's not like they're very difficult kits, right? But it seems to be happening a lot lately where even character models for the Empire are releasing in resin. So not just like named characters, which I kind of understand named characters, but even generics. Keep that in mind. Again, this is all a very educated guess, but I'm going by the trends that Games Workshop have been setting lately for the Old World, which, the less resin, the better. I don't know why they're relying so much. It's not like their printers right now for plastic aren't amazing. Like, we can see a lot of really cool quality stuff. Hell, I'd say that even some of the plastic stuff they've been releasing as of late is better than the resin in terms of quality. Now, the big question is, when can we actually see Grand Cathay on the table? That's something that I think a lot of people are asking, and a lot of people are quite excited about. I think it's going to be sooner than expected. I think it's definitely going to be this year, because they've started hinting it, and not only that, they seem to be going faster. With the Empire releasing both waves consecutively, that was really strange. So literally the day that the first release happened for the Empire, like the main release, the second wave was announced shortly after. Not only that, but now we're looking towards the High Elves, because they've shown off pretty much most of the range, confirming the Merworm, which is really, really cool. I think a lot of people are going to be quite excited about that. But they also showcased a Beastman during the reveal event. I think that was LVO. So it looks like they're just speeding up and they're trying to get them all out as fast as possible. Which, who knows why that's happening? A few people have said it's likely because Age of Sigmar is not doing too well in terms of sales and they all fall under the fantasy category. I mean, I think 4th edition did okay, nothing spectacular, but that new Goblin box, not great. It's a lot to ask for 9 miniatures, essentially. Some people will defend it, some people say it's pretty good, but I'm seeing a lot of reviews saying that it's just not a good box. Very recently, the Warhammer community Twitter page has been kind of hinting that the High Elves might be soon, which would be kind of cool, but if that's the case, I could imagine Cathay by September or something, maybe even sooner. It depends when we get all the races out. I think it's very important to first see when the High Elves release, the Wood Elves and the Beastmen. Well, Beastmen will be after the High Elves. And I could imagine a small break, a very small break, and then going, boom, there's Grand Cathay. I'm just hoping that the Grand Cathay big box, right? Because I'm not expecting a battalion box. I'm expecting like a big box is viable, right? More similar to the launch box of the Tomb Kings and the Bretonnians, just obviously without the rulebook, because I don't think a rulebook will be needed now. People can just buy them naturally anyway. But, well, barring the book for Cathay, I think that's quite important to have. But it definitely has to be bigger than the battalion boxes. Characters need to be included. If the box has a spellcaster and a melee character, that would be very useful. You could use one as the Lord, two as the Lords, or, you know, one as a BSB if it has that option. I think a BSB kit would be put aside, though, for its own individual purchase. So yeah, I just wanted to talk about Cathay today, because I'm kind of hyped up with the whole thing. You know, a lot of people have been talking about Cathay lately, and I just wanted to offer my perspective of what I expect, because I'm coming from a Total War point of view, so I think that's a different aspect, right? We've been able to see them in Total War quite often, and there's a lot of cool stuff, and I imagine there's a lot more cooler stuff on the way, because I don't imagine that they're done with Grand Cathay just yet, right? Like, it's too popular of a faction to just no more DLC. Here's hoping that my speculation is right, but I could be wrong. I'm just hoping that after Cathay we'll start to get to some proper news about Kislev, because I think a lot of people are quite curious about Kislev. I would love to see how a pretty much full, well, almost full hybrid army would work, because like hybrid units are really strong as it stands. You know, Loth and Seaguard are very, very strong, and you've got Free Company Militia and so on. The stuff with Kislev is just mostly hybrid, so yeah. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Let's start a bit of a discussion. I just really wanted to talk about some tabletop today. Have a good one, guys.